Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Darkfall tutorial. So today we're going to be doing another digital map painting, as you can see in the example here. So the first thing we should note is that we're in Cycles Render. You also want to make sure that the video resolution is the same as the movie clip that you're using. So mine's 1920 by 1080. Also make sure this is at 100%. If it's at 50%, which it is by default, you'll have some trouble with the masks. So make sure this is at 100. So now let's change this window from the 3D view to the movie clip editor. Let's go ahead and open up our movie clip. And as always, I'll leave the links for all these assets in the description, so if you want to download these, you can go ahead and do that. So this video, as soon as I seen it, I thought this would be perfect for the digital map painting that I had in mind. So I wanted to add a couple of statues, maybe add a shipwreck, maybe add some birds, some atmosphere. So there's quite a few things that we need to do, and while we're here, we might as well set the scene frames. So as soon as we hit set scene frames, we can see that it's set the timeline to be the length of your movie clip. It's a bit too long for me, so I'm just going to change this back to 250, but if you wanted to use the full length of your movie clip, make sure you press this button here. Now you might notice when you play through the footage, it's hard to play through right now, but in this movie clip there's some movement, there's some wobbles from the camera. So when we add the digital map elements, we need to make sure they move as well. So we need to add one tracking marker, so let's just jump back to the first frame. And it'll help if we just go over here to prefetch, just prefetch this. And as you can see, this bar will fill up. If it doesn't fill up all the way, you'll need to go to File, then to User Preferences, and then you'll need to go over to System. Just scroll all the way down, and you'll have this this option here, which is the memory cache limit. Just increase this, and then make sure you save it. Then when you prefetch it, it should just fill up all the way. So now we can scrub through this. If we zoom in, you might notice there's quite a bit of shake and wobble. Now when we add some statues and other little bits and pieces, you'll be very noticeable that it's moving. So that's why we need to add a tracking marker. So I'm just going to jump to the first frame. And we're just going to use one simple tracking marker since there's not really much movement. So for these settings, it's pretty much the same settings I use all the time. Motion we can leave at location. The match I'm going to change to previous frame. And I'm just going to enable normalize just to help things track a little bit better. And then down here under marker display, I just want to check the search size. So I'm just going to zoom in and find a point here. Maybe this spot here will work. I'm going to hold Control and then left click and just add a tracking marker. I'm going to press S to scale it, just make it a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to scale this part down here. This is the search size. So this is the area which Blender is going to search for this particular pattern. The larger this is, the longer it will take to track. So the smaller it is, the quicker it is to track. So I'm just going to make this something like this, and then scroll down, go to track. I just want to track this forward, and we can also watch up here and make sure it sticks to the point. Make sure it doesn't slip or move. That's pretty good. So now we have this. This is going to be our anchor point for all the elements that we add onto the shot, so keep that in mind. So while we're here, we might as well add some masks. As I mentioned, I want to add some statues. I'll be adding a statue here, maybe a statue here, and a building in the background. And to help sell these items are behind it, we need to add a mask just to mask around these objects. So I'm going to do the first one. So I'm going to change this to masking mode, or you can press tab just to switch between the both. Then I'm going to click new. And then this mask here, I'm going to name it. I'm just going to number it actually just 1, because we're going to add 3 of them. As you can see that the tracking marker is it's still selected, even though we're in masking mode. This is still selected. If you didn't want to have that selected, you can always tab back into it and just say to deselect. Whilst we're in masking mode, we will need to select it again. You can right click it while you're in the masking mode. So again, you can right click just to select it. I'm not sure how you deselect it whilst in masking mode. Maybe somebody can let us know in the comments, but press tab to jump back, press A, deselect it, just so it's not in the way. And also I'm going to get rid of these sidebars, T and N, just to get rid of those. So now I just need to create a mask for this area here. This is where the first statue is going to stand. So I'm going to hold Control and left click. like this, and I don't need to be too deadly accurate because we're going to add a little bit of a blur, and that'll be fine. And also the direction that you add a mask, whether it's clockwise or anti-clockwise, will be a factor on the feathering. So when you hold shift and left click to draw out the feathering. I mean, I've explained all this in a tutorial. If you want to check out more tutorials on masking, yeah, go ahead and check that out. I'll leave a link up at the top. You can go ahead and check that out. But for this, yeah, I'm just going to make a simple mask, and I'm going to make it quite big up here. We can always come back and adjust this. Press Alt-C, close the mask. So I'm not too sure how big the statue is going to be right now, so I'm just going to give us a bit of room. So that's the first one. We need to parent this to the tracker. So if we right click on this tracking marker, like so, and then press A to select all of these, then if we hold Control and press P, we can make this a parent. So now as we scrub through this, we can see that the mask actually moves with it, which is what we need. Great stuff. So now we're going to do the same thing for these other two, so I'll probably speed through this. It's the exact same techniques, there's nothing different. I'm just going to click New to add a new mask, rename this number 2, and then again Control left click, do the same thing, and then do the same thing for the third one. So I'm just going to speed through this and I'll get back to you in a second. Make sure the tracking marker is selected, right click, press A to select all of these, and then if we just bring up the side here, you can see what I do. If I hold Control and press P, we just made it a parent. And make sure you do that for all the masks, so they move along with the footage. Otherwise you will have some masking issues later on. So now we have these. We'll come back later on and add some more masks when we need to, but for now we can move on. So let's change this from the movie clip editor to the node editor. So this is where we're going to composite our shot, and as always we need to change this to the scene tab. We need to make sure we check use nodes for these two nodes to appear. Then also we want to make sure we check backdrop just so we can see a preview of what we're doing. Now we have the render layer and a composite node. Obviously the composite node is the thing that we render to, so make sure we always have one of these. This render layers, we don't need it since we're going to be using a movie clip. Now you can either press X and delete it, or if you're using the Node Wrangler add-on, what we can do if we hold Shift and then press S with this selected, we can actually switch the type. So I'm going to go to switch the type input to movie clip. And also we need a viewer node, so again you can either Shift A, go to output and add a viewer node, or if you've got the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, Control Shift and then left click. So now we have these. Now we can open up the movie clip. Instead of pressing open, let's just select this icon here next to it. We already have this movie clip loaded, so let's go ahead and select this. So it's far too big now, and if you don't have this sidebar open, press N. Scroll down to where it says backdrop. Let's just zoom this out. You can also move this around. If you click, you can take control of it and then click again, we can position it. Okay, so now we have this. I'm just going to save it. So the technique is pretty simple and it's similar to what we've done before. So if you followed along in previous tutorials, you will already have an idea how this works. But it's very simple. We're just going to Shift A, go to Input. We're going to add in an image. Shift A, go to Color, add a mix. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this on this bottom line, on the bottom string here, which is connected to the composite. And then I'm going to use the lazy connect to connect this up to the viewer. So Control Shift left click, and this will only work if you've got the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. And again, I did a tutorial on that if you want to check that out. Let's connect this image to the bottom input here. Go to open. So I downloaded a few images from Pixabay and Pexels. Again, I'll leave a link in the description. They started off as a JPEG, and then I just cut it out and then saved it as a PNG. This one here was already a PNG, but I just added a sword and made it look a little bit different. We have some other images that we're going to use as well, but it's entirely up to you what you use and obviously the scene that you compose. But yeah, if you want to use these images or the images that I used, you can go ahead and do that. So there's two things you'll notice. The first thing is that it's far too big, and the second thing it's showing black around the sides when it should be transparent. Over on this mix node, we just need to select this icon here, which now will use the alpha. That's good. Now for this, we need to resize it, so Shift A, go to Distort, and then we want Transform. Just drop this in. If you hold Shift and then drag this, it'll move down in smaller amounts rather than anything too crazy. And let's move this over. So I'm just going to position this where I want it to be. And also the light is actually, if we notice on the movie clip, we can see the light's actually coming from this direction. And on the statue, it would have been coming from this direction. So we need to flip this statue. So Shift A, go to Distort, add a flip node, just drop this in before. There we go, so now it's facing the right way. So that's not too bad. So now let's go ahead and add the mask that we created before. So Shift A, go to Input, down to Mask. Drop this up here. So the first thing we need to do is select the mask icon here, and we want to select number 1. It's the first one we created. I'm going to drop this into the factor, and we can see it's worked here, but as you notice, it's cut some parts off here, and that's because I didn't really know it. I didn't really know the size at the time. Now what we can do, we can just jump back over to the movie clip editor and then just change it, or what we can do is just going to split this window instead, change this to movie clip editor. Get rid of these sidebars by pressing T and N. Now we know this is the first mask, so we need to go over here, select the mask icon, change it back to number 1. We can actually see the changes in real time, so as I drag this over, it changes. Otherwise we'd have to jump back, keep jumping back and forward to see if we've actually moved it enough. But as you can see, that's pretty good. It's not clipping it anymore. So now we have this. So now I'm just going to close this window, right click on the edge here and just left click. There's going to be quite a few nodes. In fact, there's going to be quite a lot of nodes, so I'm going to make some space now. I'm just going to press B, box select these two here and just drag these over like so. So now we need to work on the depth. We can see it doesn't look like it's sat in the distance, so Shift A, go to Color, RGB Curves. I'm going to drop this in straight after the transform node. Now I want to fade this in and kind of match this island here. I'm going to left click this point and just drag it up a little bit. Just drag it up some and see how it looks. Maybe a bit more. I'm also going to left click, add a point here and just drag it down. Just make this darker. Okay, that looks good. So the next thing we can do is add a hue saturation node. Shift A, Color, Hue Saturation Value. Just drop this in here. I'm going to desaturate it a little bit. Maybe 0.8. That looks okay. Now another thing I want to do is add a blur node, since it looks far too detailed, whereas everything else looks kind of hazy. So let's go back to the beginning here. Shift A. Go to Filter, add in a blur, just drop this in here. And this is only going to be a small amount of blur, we will notice it here. I'm just going to left click and then drag, just so I select both of these at the same time. Say 3, hit enter. So the last thing we can do is add a contact shadow. If we notice here, there'd be a shadow gradient going from darker to lighter, as it would in the real world. So let's get this mixed node selected. I'm going to press Shift D, just copy it. And then just place it here between the hue saturation and the mix. Then Shift A, go to Matte. I'm going to use an ellipse mask. Just drop this in here. And this mask is going to be connected to the factor, like this. So this is where the ellipse mask is. We need to move this up, and we can do so by dragging it on these values here. Let's move it over a little bit more. Now obviously we need this to be a darker color, so for now I'm just going to drag this to the black just to see how it looks. We also need this to fade out as well, so Shift A, add another blur node, Filter, Blur, just drop this in here. And then for this one we're going to need quite a bit, so I'm going to again left click, drag down just so I can select both of these. Let's try 90, see how that looks. That's pretty good. Problem is the color is wrong, it's incorrect. And the way we can get the correct color is if we select this color here, go to the color sample tool, left click, and then we just want to select sample a color from here, just left click. And look how well that looks. It looks so much better. We select this mix node and we can see before and after the contact shadow. So this is with the contact shadow and this is without. So this was before, and it makes it look so much more integrated. So now we have this. If we played through the footage, you might not notice it because it's such a small amount, but all these details will not move because they're the single images. So we just need to add a node just to make these move. So let's jump back to the first frame, and again we've done this in previous tutorials before, so if you guys followed along, you'll already know how to do this. Shift A, go to input, track position. So this is going to control the node. So this track position. We created a tracking marker before, and we're going to use that. Shift A, let's go down to distort, then translate. Since we're not worried about the scale and the angle, we don't need the transform, so we're just going to use the simple translate node. So we can just plug this in here. So we just plug this in after the mix node here. And we can see this is the mask. The mask already moves. If you remember, we parented the masks to that tracker. Now we just need to sort of parent this statue to the tracker, and that's why we added the translate node. This track position node that we added, we just need to go ahead and change a few things. Select this icon here. Then you can select the movie clip that you're using. Then here we want to select this and choose camera. And then for this one, we want to choose track. Now for the position, we want to change this from absolute to relative start. Otherwise it won't start from the same position that we've just set this to. So make sure you change this to relative start. That's important as well. Now just connect the X to the X and the Y to the Y. Now we have this. Everything's going to move and nothing's going to be out of place. That first statue is done. So what we can do, we can actually copy all these nodes. Instead of doing all these nodes again one by one, we can just copy these nodes and use it in a different position. That will save us a little bit of time. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these. So everything except the original movie clip. Press B, left click, and just drag and select all of these. Now we can either go down here, which is the copy and paste buttons, or we can hold Control and then press C to copy. Then hold Control and press V to paste. Now as you can see, they're in the exact same position, so what we need to do is press G, just move these out of the way. And we'll move these along over here. And what we'll need to do, if we can see this node was this one here, so now we can select this mix node and just connect it up to that empty slot here. Might be a little bit hard to see since it's quite zoomed out, but we just added it to this slot here in the middle. And then we can see these are still connected. Let's get rid of these. We can hold Control and left click, get rid of them. We want to take this feed here from this mix that we just copied, plug this into the composite node and the viewer node. So now we have this, and straight away you'll notice there is no difference between these nodes and these nodes. There's no difference. We just added the same effect right on top of the old one. So we need to go ahead and change pretty much everything. So what I'm going to do, just to make our life a lot easier, I'm going to press A just to make sure nothing is selected. Then I'm going to press B. I'm going to select everything here except for the mix node and except for the image. We don't want to select them. We have everything else selected. Now if I press M, I've just muted all of these and we have this original image pop back up. So hopefully this is not too confusing. All we've done is copy these nodes, then muted all these middle ones. And now I'm going to just change this image here, just delete this, and then go ahead and open up our second statue image. So it's kind of like we've started again, and instead of adding all these nodes separately, we've just copied them and we'll activate them as we need them. So we have the image, this blur node, I'll come back to this in a minute since we don't really need to worry about the blur right now. The flip, we don't need to worry about the flip since the lighting is in the correct area. So we can go ahead and delete this one. If we hold Control and press X, we can delete it whilst keeping this connection active. Now this transform node, we can select this transform node and then press M just to unmute it. Now, it's not perfect, we need to move this over here. Okay, so now we have the position here, that's not too bad. This RGB curves, if we remember, this is going to add this sort of depth to our image. So select this, press M. Gives us a nice faded look, but we need this to be even more faded because you can see this island is closer to the camera and this is a bit further away and this is even more further away. So we need to sort of replicate that with changing this value here. But before I do that, I just want to make sure this statue sits behind the island. So scroll out, let's find this mask node here. Now before I unmute it, I just want to select this icon, change it to number 2. Then if we press M to unmute it, we can see it now sits behind. It's pretty good. Okay, so yeah, let's go back to this RGB curves here, and we just want to keep increasing this, keep bringing this higher just to make it look further away. Try and find something that looks pretty good. It doesn't look too bad. Let's go back to the blur here now. So we want this to be a bit blurrier than this. So let's unmute this. And then let's left click, drag it down, select both of these. Maybe they make this 6. Let's see how that looks. Let's go over to the next one, which is the hue saturation. Press M to unmute it. Now the saturation, this needs a bit more desaturation. Now the next thing is the contact shadow. So this needs changing a little bit. We can select this ellipse mask, press M, unhide it. Do the same thing for this mix node, press M to unhide it. We're going to leave this blur as it is for now. Select the ellipse mask again, and we can see it's all the way over here. So let's move this over here. So again, I'm holding shift when I drag these values, because if I don't hold shift, it goes like this, which is almost uncontrollable. So hold shift when you drag these values. It'll certainly help. That's a bit too high. Let's go to the blur, unmute this. So this should be fine. Looks pretty good. Again, the color is incorrect. It's using the same color for this, but as you can see, the island it's a lot different. So let's go over to the mix node, select the color, select the color selection tool, and then we need to make some space, so I'm just going to drag this over here. Select the color, select the selection tool, left click on this, and as soon as we do this, as it loads, you can see it just sort of blends in straight away. There we go. Looks pretty good. And again, if it doesn't look like it's blended in, do it again. Just select this color and find another place and just sample from a different area, because sometimes it might not look too good, sometimes it looks better. So just trying to find a place that works for you. And finally, we can unmute these two. Again, these two are just going to move. These two are just going to keep the statue in position as we need it to. So I'm going to do the next one again. I'm going to do the same thing for the last one. I'm going to do it pretty quickly. It's going to be the same things. I'm just going to select all these again. Control C, Control V. I'm going to press G. Just move these over. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did before, where I muted these and then just changed the values as I needed to. So there's no point showing you the same thing again. You guys will probably get bored of that by now. So I'll get back to you in a second. So I'm going to add a few more things. I'm going to add an image of a shipwreck over here. I also want to add some birds over here. They're going to be so small it's hard to notice, but I mean, it adds a little bit more life to the scene. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to quickly show you how I'm going to do that. So again, make sure we don't have anything selected. Press B, drag these over. And for this, I don't think I'm going to be as in depth as this. All right, so we don't need as many nodes as we did before. Shift A, input movie clip. Shift A, color mix. Again, I'm going to drop this onto the bottom string, plug this into the bottom input, go to open. Again, I'll throw a link to these videos if you want to download these too. So as you can see, it's a few birds here that's sitting on some logs. So Shift A, let's go down to matte, and I want to use the distance key and just plug this in right here. Now I want to increase this tolerance all the way up to 1. Let's see what happens. And again, instead of previewing this, I want to preview this. So Control left click, or just connect this up to the viewer node for now. So this is what's happening. We don't need to worry about the sky. We just want to worry about the sea area here. So before it looked like this, now it's just getting rid of all that color here. That's just increasing the tolerance. Now what we need to do is select the color. I'm just going to drag this up until we get rid of more of these lines here. But I also don't want to ruin the birds, so be careful how much you use. And also we can increase the fall off just to help get the ones around it. But that's pretty good. But again, these birds are going to be so small, it's going to be hard to notice. We're just merely going to be using them for the maybe the silhouette more than anything. So now we have this, and if we preview if we can see, if we control left click again on this node, it just shows us the matte or the mask, or you can just plug this into the viewer node. So again, what we want these birds to be white. I'm not worried about these logs here, but everything else needs to be black. So let's go ahead and create that. So let's go ahead and add that extra black. So Shift A. Under the matte, I'm going to use a box mask. Just drop this here. And in fact, we can drop this on the matte string here. And we can see it's just added this this square here. So instead of this mask being add, we want to change this mask type to subtract. So change it to black. Then let's just increase the size of this. Let's also increase the height. And let's drag this up on the Y. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to hold Shift just so this doesn't move too crazy. So I just want to go around here, get rid of this white. Now I have this. Let's go ahead and copy it. Shift D. Just drop it on behind it. And for this one, let's drag this one down. I just want to show maybe a little bit of these logs. That looks good. So now we have this mask. If we click this, if we preview this again, select this up to the viewer node, and we remember. So now we don't need this to be connected. So connect the original video. This was just to create a mask. So now we have this. We can plug this into the factor, which will give us this. Again, if you want to keep the logs and have it in the foreground, these birds, that's pretty cool. You can do that too. But for this, I'm going to move them all the way up into the distance, and they're just going to sit here, and yeah, it should look pretty good. So now I want to move this whole thing. They're just going to be there for adding a little bit more of interest. So by the time it ends, one of them will actually jump over here. So they might not be noticeable, but for me, I think it adds a bit more life into the scene. So I'm going to add maybe another bird in the distance. Also, again, as I mentioned, I'm going to add that shipwreck here. So I'm going to add a very simple color grade. So Shift A, go to color. I'm going to add an RGB curves. Connect this up to the viewer node as well. I'm going to add a Shift A, go to color, with color balance. So again, I'm going to add some more details to this. Maybe even add some smoke for atmosphere. So now we want to render this out. We want to make sure everything's connected up to the composite node. Then let's go down here to output. We want to make sure we know where we save this to, so go ahead and set your output. So now we have the output saved. You can either save this as a PNG image sequence, or you can save this out as a movie clip. So the file format I like to use, FFmpeg video. Then we need to make sure we set the encoding. So again, depending on what you like to use, you can go ahead and choose that. I'm going to go to presets. I like to use H.264 in MP4 format. It seems to give me a decent result and works well for YouTube and everywhere else I use it. There is no audio, but if there was, you want to make sure you select this and change this to MP3. Everything else should be good. So now you can go ahead and hit animation. And so hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, be sure to give this a like. As always, thank you for watching, and see you next time.